What is the fastest you have ever seen a new coworker get fired? During their onboarding training, they stole my boss's wallet on camera. 1 hour in. This is the opposite route here, but I found it amusing. My boss was out of town and I managed a tea shop near a Starbucks years ago. This kid came in, foreign, and said he was supposed to start today. We were hiring and I trained him, etc. My boss came back 2 days later and had no idea. The kid was in the wrong place, but he stayed with us. Hired on the spot without even applying. Would be funny to see a comment from the Starbucks manager of having to fire his new hiree that never showed up on day one further down in this thread. A week. I worked in a bar and a new girl started. At work, she seemed a little rough but was fine. One day she finished a shift, sat at the bar and ordered a red wine with lemonade and ice in it. Not really relevant to the story, just shows she is clearly insane. Her boyfriend came in, they had a huge domestic in front of my manager and several customers, and she threw her drink over her BF and dramatically stormed out. New bar drink. Wine plus lemonade equals a domestic. Don't forget it's on the rocks, just like the relationship. New guy drove a forklift into a fire hydrant, in front of a safety rep for the company. His supervisor was called over, and he immediately tells the supervisor that he won't pass a piss test, as he used his only bottle of clean piss earlier that day when he hired in. Everybody standing there immediately burst into laughter, which continued as security, also laughing, escorted him off-site. Even the supervisor was all smiles, just gave him a pat on the back and wished him the best of luck. It was wild. This is certainly the happiest firing on this page, lol. Hope the guy is doing well. This happened to me. I worked inventory in a warehouse. I pushed and worked to get on the forklift. Did all the training required and got promoted. First lift I made, I ran over about $1,000 worth of materials. I was immediately moved back to inventory. Not everyone should be on a forklift or the other lifts in a warehouse/store. My old boss had a couple of fights with the gorilla racks in the warehouse. She maintained that it was her right to put the back of the lift into the upright or to stab the upright with the fork because she was moving. We, yes me included, even had to replace several uprights because of her, because they were banged up and unsafe. If anyone doubts how unsafe even nudging a rack upright can be, go ask YouTube about warehouse forklift accidents. We're all lucky that she didn't get us on that list. She usually left pallets hanging off in several different unsafe manners, and we would have to pull them down and put them up in a safe way, often in a different aisle. The warehouse even had to change their policy about overhead stock because of her. She would also put pallets up with stock not safely on the pallet or safely secured to the pallet. I only saw stuff fall off once or twice in 5 years though, and it was light stuff that probably would have just hurt. Oh yeah, she also nearly pushed pallets off the other side of the rack and left them teetering over the other aisle while we yelled at her to stop. And on top of all of that, she was one of the laziest people I've ever worked with and was very slow on the forklift. She ran the lifts because she was the manager and what she says goes. Until the store manager told her she couldn't drive the forklift anymore. She could still use the order picker because it was as slow as she was. That was after she put a fork into an upright in the tile aisle and didn't tell anyone, and knocked the phones off of the uprights a few times and denied it even though there were cameras and eyewitnesses. Took years just to get her off the lifts, and every employee and customer is safer for it. Her car was banged up too. Can't imagine why. This was a while ago at my old job. New guy gets hired as a busboy. He was super annoying and tried to insert himself into everyone's conversation whether they wanted him there or not. It only took a couple of hours for the whole restaurant to hate him. I was working the bar and he kept eating the bar fruit. I personally didn't care, but the manager did. Manager comes over and tells him to stop eating the fruit. He looks the manager in the eye and eats another piece of fruit. Manager says, "Really?" Followed by, "Come with me to the office." New guy promptly replies with, "All right man, calm down. I can tell you got that big dick energy for a good reason," followed with cliche wink and nudge from his elbow. In front of me and like 4 other employees. I wanted to slam my face into the ice bin, It was so cringy to witness. He promptly walked out the front door 10 minutes later without his uniform on anymore. The worst thing about it was the manager was an insanely laid-back guy. Hell, the whole restaurant was insanely laid back. You really had to try hard to get fired from this place. Had he not thrown in that big dick line, I'm almost positive he would have just gotten a slap on the wrist and kept the job. You got that big dick energy absolutely kills me. Why would you ever say that to anyone? Let alone your boss. I got hired as a long-term temp with one other person to do some basic data entry work at a major brand pretty much everyone has heard of. And it was at their corporate headquarters, so pretty prestigious. Anyway, we went through all of this onboarding stuff in the morning that required us to get photo IDs and figure out parking and all that stuff. Then after 2 or 3 hours we were introduced to one of the employees in our new department who began going over what we were going to be doing. None of it seemed overly difficult, and I figured that while it was new system I had never used before, I'd be able to work it out in a few days as long as I asked questions and took notes. And that was the thing that made me realize that the other person who got hired with me probably lied on her resume and was completely out of her depth. She didn't take any notes and didn't ask any questions. And whenever I glanced at her I could see flashes of panic on her face. Well, lunchtime came, and when we came back she said that another company had called her and offered her a permanent position and she couldn't work with us any longer. Both me and the person training us knew what was going on, but I'll give the other lady credit for finding a way out without losing face too badly. The takeaway here is, yes, fake it until you make it can and does work. But you gotta be able to fake it. You can't fake faking it. Exactly. Gotta do it right. My aunt, many moons ago as a young woman, applied to a well-paid job as a secretary. The interview went well and she typed really well and quickly. There was a test, and then she was asked if she could also do stenography, which she answered in the affirmative. It was also a lie. You bet she went and took lessons and got boost on it immediately, and was up to a fairly good ability by the time that job actually started. This is how fake it until you make it actually works. A 19-year-old kid got hired to work the seafood counter. See him twice and then never again. Asked a co-worker what happened. He had closed seafood one night and was walking out of the store, and the 5 pounds of crab legs he'd stuffed down the back of his pants fell out in front of the closing manager. Edit, it was at a Publix. No, it was not Jameis Winston. Did this young man happen to win the Heisman Trophy? He was intercepted by the closing manager, so yeah, it was probably him.